This is Friday, March the 17th, and I've just come from Lee Summit, sitting in the living room, John and Janine Wiseman, talking, praying, sharing, leaving for Israel tomorrow, hoping and trusting that we'll be able to talk and share and pray again in a couple of weeks. But just in case I don't make it back in time to sit and visit again with John and Janine, I just wanted to share from my heart how much Brother John Wiseman has meant to this pastor through the years. I don't have words to express. I thought about writing a letter for Tina's book, scrapbook. It'd be difficult to write just a letter. I could write a book. My. Years ago, the Wiseman started coming to Grandview Assembly, and the years have gone by. So much water gone under the bridge. Many, many wonderful times, and all the trips and camps and services. And I told Sister Johnson, I just can't imagine pastoring Grandview Assembly without John Wiseman. I know when he's with the Lord, that's far better for him. And some have asked, well, who's going to take his place? Who's going to fill his shoes? No one. That's simple. No one can take John's place or fill his shoes. Thought of so many scriptures that remind me of John. There's one where Paul told Timothy to be an example of the believers. Brother John has been an example to us all through the years. There came a time here in 2 Samuel chapter 23 when it says David, after all the years of the battles he'd fought, the ups and downs, successes, and his failures, and his mistakes, his victories, it was drawing near to the end of his reign as king, and he remembered back in the hard times and the battles, and when they were down in the cave by En-Gedi and running from Saul and all those things, and he had a little army of volunteers, and now he remembered them, and he had some names that stood out to him as he remembered the mighty men that had stood by his side through thick or thin. And right up the top of the list of the mighty men, along with some others through the years, but none more loyal, more faithful, more committed, more devoted to the cause of Christ and to the Lord, and then to his pastor and to the church, of course his family, was John Wiseman. Loyalty, faithfulness, support, prayers, love, care, understanding. A few times he said, well, Pastor, I don't always agree with you, but I'm praying for you, and I'm backing you, and I'm standing with you. And I kidded him and said, well, John, you'll see the light someday and know that I was right. Well, none of us are always right. There's a few decisions through the years. If I had them to make over, I'd make them different. But John is always there. And I remember the Israel trip. He was able to be with us, and all the different memories that come flooding to my mind. But may I sum it up simply by saying that the book of Acts is still being written. And when you turn over to Hebrews 11 and you read the roll call of the Hebrews of the faith, the faithful, they were faithful because they were full of faith. And because they were full of faith, they were faithful. There's a lot of names over the last 2,000 years since the early church, and the patriarchs and the prophets of the Old Testament and the apostles and of the New. A lot of names have been added to God's big book. But I know that I know that I know that one of the names there on the Hall of the Faithful, the Wall of the Faithful, that the Hall of Fame of the Faithful in Hebrews 11, there's a name that we all know very well, and treasured and loved, think so much of, the name John Wiseman. I've been humbled and honored and blessed to be his pastor. And I look forward to that day. I remember the Sunday morning just a few weeks ago, he said that service, that song service was just for me. The first song was "I've a Home Prepared, with the saints abide just over to the glory land." The next one was "What a Day That'll Be, when my Jesus I shall see." And then the final one was "It is well with my soul." And John said he sat and wept through all those because the Lord was speaking to him. And they were special for him, and those were his songs that Sunday morning. And what a day that'll be when our Jesus we shall see and we meet. John and the loved ones that have gone on before, ever to be with the Lord. Until then, I thank God for the privilege of knowing, having as a buddy and as a friend, a co-laborer with Christ, John Wiseman. Bless his heart. Love him dearly and thank God for him.
Okay, you're live.
Brother John, I just wanted you to share with us some of your memories back when you were growing up and all, and I know there's the Wiseman Church and those days, and you're finding the Lord and that sort of thing, so just kind of tell us about the days when you thought you were Johnny Getwood.
Well, I was raised on a farm down in the Ozarks and went to church about all my life. I lived in what was known as the Wiseman community. Everybody around was relation. Went to Wiseman Church and Wiseman School. I can remember when I was a kid, we'd evangelists come through the country, and they had him a time or two before, I guess, and he said that the only way that he would come if they was to have church every day. And it was in the summertime during haying season, and I can remember going and working in the field and then tying the horses up, and we lived where I could walk to church, go up to the church, have church, and then go home and work in the hayfield in the afternoon, and then go back to church at night. My mother said that, yeah, she could remember it because she got so tired of going so much that they couldn't even hardly get meals cooked or anything else. But I suppose that was probably where I don't remember if that's when I accepted the Lord. I knew I was about 13 years old when I accepted the Lord. And I remember how the morning I accepted the Lord, how I went out after church, how green everything looked, and how much different that everything looked. And like I said, that I was the oldest of 5 kids. And during World War II, my dad come and worked in Kansas City, and so I was pretty well in charge of everything. I was about 13 years old, and of course we had to, like I said, to get wood. I was the oldest. My mother would say, "John Getwood," and that's what I thought my middle name was for a long time. And they did not have a tractor at that time. We did not have automobile or transportation was horseback. Everything I done was, when I was a kid, we done on horseback. So when the folks did get a cars during World War II, and I never did get to drive it because tires was rationed, gasoline was rationed. Then me and my dad played catch quite a bit because I was left-handed. Dad played baseball, and I could throw pretty hard and pretty good. One day, me and a neighbor kid Dad said, all you got to do today is to watch the hogs, that they don't get in where the little pigs are. And there was a little old pig got in to where the chicken feeder was. Well, it's to keep the hogs out from the chicken feeder. One pig got in there, and I was probably about 40 or 50 foot away, and I hollered for that little pig to get out, and he turned and looked at me, and I cut down on him with a baseball, and I killed him. It just, of course, Dad was gone, and we had to get a neighbor to come up and help us. It was in the summertime, and of course, you didn't have freezers and things. We had to butcher that pig, and Mom had to can it that afternoon. They started a baseball team in a little town about 25 miles away, and I went up there and tried out, and I made the team. And I played with them that summer, and I'd never played baseball before. And I got a letter from, was in the St. Louis Browns. They wanted me to come for tryout camp. But there's so much turmoil in the world that wars and rumors of wars. And I decided I better go in the Army instead of going to camp tryout, because I guess really I didn't think I was good enough because I'd never played baseball before that one year. Then I went in the Army and went overseas, and I played in the Army and played with 2 teams. I was good enough that I got to play with the battalion team, and then I could play otherwise with the company team. And I even made the all-star team. I don't know what would have happened if I'd kept playing baseball, but I guess God knew what was going on. I come back from the Army, got married, had a couple children. I wasn't going to church hardly ever, not like a lot of them. I knew it ought to be, but I developed foul language, and I could not control it. I could control it at home, but whenever I got out around the guys, I just couldn't. I'd try it, and then I kept saying, when I get where I can control my mouth, then I'll go to church. But boy, I wasn't getting anywhere. And then our second son was, when he was born, he weighed less when he was 2 months old than he did when he was born. And I called the doctor one day, and my wife or I, either one, wasn't getting any sleep. I called the doctor one day, and I said, Doc, my wife can't take it anymore. He said, well, I'll tell you, he said, you can bring him back to the hospital, but it's just a matter of time. There's nothing that can be done. Well, I didn't tell my wife what the doctor said, but I knew when we walked out of that hospital that day that the next trip would be to the cemetery. And I was standing at the west window at KU Medical Center. And I said, God, I can't handle it. Just can't. And I made a rededication right there. The church where we went occasionally, where the preacher was that married us, was in a revival. I went to the altar that night and made a rededication, and that profanity left just instantly. Wasn't no more trouble with it. And I began to want the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And the Lord, every time I get serious with the Lord, He'd said, I want your family, or I want your children. I said, no, Lord, because I knew the feeling of what it was like whenever the doctor told me that we'd take him home in a coffin. But finally I wanted it so bad that I said, Lord, you can just have everything. Well, of course, he didn't take anything. But I never did worry about my children anymore after that, because it was all just in the hands of the Lord. Well, we changed churches for we had teenage boys by that time. And the pastor where we was at, his wife never had any children, and she was just death on young people. And they got where they just hated to go to church, so we changed churches because of the children. We started coming to Grandview Assembly, and the kids liked it so well that we just changed churches. Well, we've been coming here, I guess about 3 or 4 months, and they bought a bus because Sister Johnson was getting up